All right, let's talk about President Biden's first State of the Union address tonight, taking a stance on Russia, assessing where the U.S. is at the pandemic and the economy. So let's break it down for my guests tonight. First up, former HHS official and founder of JK Strategies, Jack Kalavritinos, and co-founder of the Rural Voter Institute and partner at Terrain Media Group, Isaac Wright, both return guests to the Final Five. Both of them up late live with us here at this ungodly hour of 12:32 in the morning. Good to see you guys. Thanks for joining me tonight.
Good to be with you, my friend.
All right, so we know Jack there. Isaac here. I'll say this: your party won the toss. We'll call that the election last time. What did you like from President Biden here, and what maybe do you wish he talked more about tonight?
Tonight was a phenomenal night. Joe Biden brought a positive vision for a country that has returned to global leadership. In the moment of crisis, when a mad dictator is storming a sovereign nation, Joe Biden has led Western democracies across the globe in a united front to push back. I think he brought that strength of presence, that restoration of America's place on the global stage tonight. And then he transitioned from that into talking about, and this is what I really respected, he talked about the strength of the economy and he talked about the weak spots of the economy. He talked about record numbers of new jobs that had been brought, and at the same time, how so many American families have missed the gains they expected to feel from that because of rising inflation and resulting issues in the supply chain.
Yeah.
And he laid out granular plans about how to tackle those things, about how to continue the economic progress that we have made in the last year, as well as to talk about how we can address those fundamental issues with inflation. The key components he mentioned tonight at a very granular level when he talked about things like how do we lower costs and increase wages as a way to fight inflation.
Let me get to Jack on this one, Jack, because I'll tell you what, as you heard Isaac mention, what he liked about the speech there, and Tom Fitzgerald pointed this out, you know that the speech had to change drastically in the last week because so much of it focused on Ukraine to start, and the president found some points that he got bipartisan support on. But what do you think? What do you think maybe the president did right, and what did he miss out on here?
I guess I watched a very different speech because I thought that it was actually, I was counting them up. I think this is 30 plus of these I've seen since Reagan's first in 1980. I think it was actually the worst delivered speech I've ever heard. As I think Dana Perino said, it's like he took all the pages, threw them up in the air, and then just started reading pages other than starting with Ukraine. I think Ukraine had a chance to be great, but like a reporter from Ukraine said right afterwards, people had to be disappointed on the ground because it was almost like he was taking this victory lap for having predicted that Russia was going to invade, and then all of our great sanctions that sadly haven't changed a thing. So instead of talking about, we're going to give you every bit of military assistance so that you can, fight these terrible Russians who come in, instead, it was just sort of empty. And then on the economy, it was sad because he was talking about jobs. Well, he hasn't created the jobs. That was the great, it wasn't the Great Recession. It was the Great Repression. We mandated ourselves out of a great economy and jobs started coming back. And then his point about tax cuts actually was so blatantly false that even the Post gave it 3 Pinocchios when he first started talking about, the impact of the tax cuts.
So
for me, I was very disappointed.
Isaac, we know that states of the union, State of the Unions, whatever we want to call them, they're aspirational. This is where a president comes out and says, this is what I want to see the Congress do. This is what I'd like to see done. And very few of those things that are brought up tend to push their way through. President also brought up about oil prices tonight. Then he hit, I guess this is where he wants to get the bipartisan support. He laid out what he's calling a unity agenda, dealing with opioids, mental health care, supporting veterans, and what a renewal of the Cancer Moonshot initiative that he oversaw as vice president here. What on that list there, and I want to give you about 30 seconds here, what do you think could get the most support from both sides?
I think that you ought to be able to see a united front on all 4 of those points. I think you ought to be able to see Republicans join with Democrats in unifying around an agenda to do things like end cancer, protect children's mental health, right? These are fight the opioid epidemic. These are common goals that we ought to be able to share across party lines. But you saw Republicans in that chamber tonight boo the fact that 6.5 million new jobs were created in the last year, 369,000 new manufacturing jobs in America last year alone were created, and Republicans booed that news, right? So I hope that the mainstream working Republicans in this country will take their party leadership back from the elites in Washington and say that jobs are a good thing, that we can agree that we ought to be able to work together to end cancer, to protect our kids' mental health, that there are some goals that should be above partisan rhetoric and that we can unify around and tackle together as one nation.
Jack, I'm going to get your response to that. In the meantime, you guys hang tight there. We don't usually do this on the Final Five, but I'm going to ask you to stick around because we're back right after this.